So with the transfer portal remaining open through the end of the day and so many questions still in the air, let's talk about something that I know Alabama fans are excited about, and that's the Crimson Tide's new offense. But we need to be more specific. We need to focus in. Because when you talk to Alabama fans, understandably, many are excited about this passing attack, and how could you not be? But today, we need to talk about another area for this offense that I believe will be a real strength in 2024, an area that features a room as loaded as any in college football. And of course, today, we're talking about the running backs. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill, I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe Alabama's rushing attack will be a strength for the Crimson Tide in 2024? And let's take it a step further. Who do you believe will be the leading rusher? I can't wait to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions seem small, but they are massive to content creators such as myself. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And before we can really start breaking down the room as a whole, I wanted to talk about some of the other reasons why I'm so excited and why I believe this will be a strength for Alabama in 2024. And of course, that's the coaches. And we're going to start with Alabama retaining a key piece to the coaching staff, Robert Gillespie. Because not only is Gillespie a real elite recruiter, but he is a really good running back coach. So good, multiple schools reached out this offseason, and Alabama was lucky to be able to retain him. But what it does provide Alabama, aside from giving them a really solid running back coach, is continuity at the position. A position, like I alluded to in the intro, is as loaded as any room in college football. And that alone should be cause for excitement. But we can take it a step further. Because not long ago, Kalen DeBoer did an interview where he was talking about his offensive philosophy, and he stated that he tailors that offensive philosophy to the personnel at his disposal. And I went back and looked at Washington, and that's 100% true. The year before he had Dillon Johnson, they were spreading the ball around between their running backs, but once they got someone that Kalen DeBoer felt like he could rely on as an every down back, the running game usage changed vastly. In fact, Dillon Johnson had 100 more carries than the leading rusher the year prior. And if we remember in the playoffs, Dillon Johnson was a key piece to this offense. He was just so banged up that it actually kind of hindered the Washington offense as a whole. Now, luckily for Alabama, you don't just have one guy that you feel confident in. You have several. Something we have got to break down. And we're going to start at the top with Justice Haynes, the name that if you poll Alabama fans, I believe this would be the name most people are really excited for, and understandably so. Haynes is a hyper-balanced running back, the type of guy that excels at everything, and one of the reasons why running backs like this always excite me, it's because it's really difficult for a defense to key in on what you're doing. Think about it like this. If you have a guy that's simply a short yardage running back, defenses can kind of key in on what play you're running. But with a guy like Justice Haynes, the whole playbook is open, meaning a defensive coordinator's entire playbook is open, and it increases the possibilities and things they have to think about. Now, luckily for Alabama fans, your running back room is loaded with guys that have that same type of versatility that they can bring to the table, meaning it's going to be very hard, no matter who's in, for defensive coordinators to key in. But Justice Haynes has a balance that every running back room in the nation is looking for, and that's a reason Alabama fans should be excited. And if it was just Justice Haynes, you would already be very excited about what's to come in 2024. But luckily, there's also Jam Miller. And Jam Miller is a guy, I say this about Richard Young all the time, and it certainly carries over for Jam Miller. You give him an inch, he's going to take a mile. This guy has got so much speed and explosiveness, and he's been waiting his turn. He's been learning, and I think this year he is due for a big year. In fact, we saw it during A-Day, whereas second he got a little bit of room, he was gone, and he is real hard to bring down, real hard to catch. If that was your 1-2 tandem, any school in the nation would be over the moon about the prospect of having Justice Haynes and Jam Miller, and deservedly so. When we look at Justice Haynes, he was a former 5-star. When we look at Jam Miller, he was one of the top prospects in his respective recruiting class as well. Meaning, this room is hyper-talented, and these guys have a lot of abilities that you need to be excited about. But we continue down the list, and that's part of what I was meaning earlier in the intro. This room is so loaded, it's not just Justice Haynes. It's not just Jam Miller. We get to Richard Young. And Richard Young, like Justice Haynes, was a former 5-star and a guy that really impressed a lot of Alabama fans during A-Day. Because, like I just said with Jam Miller, you give Richard Young an inch, he's going to take a mile. And he's going to take several defenders with him. Because during A-Day, what we saw is a guy that runs angry, a guy that feels like he has something to prove. And I believe if you give him the opportunities this year, he's going to prove a lot. Not only to Alabama fans, but to college football as a whole. He is a power back, but once again, has that versatility to where he can do a lot of what you'd like in your offense. And to me, that's exactly what you're looking for, especially with these new age offenses, especially with Kalen DeBoer's offense. This is the type of guy that the first guy is very unlikely to bring down solo. It's going to take a team effort, and he's probably going to drag them several yards. I think Alabama fans at the end of this year are going to be really excited about what Richard Young did, not only in the season, but the future they still have with him, because I believe he is a hyper-talented guy, someone I've continued to say I think is one of the most underrated players, not only on Alabama's roster, but in the whole of college football. And I think that's saying something. Already between those three, you have two former 5-stars and a guy who was one of the top prospects in his respective recruiting class in Jam Miller. If your running back room consisted of those three guys right there, everybody would be sailing into the sunset with a smile from ear to ear. But luckily for Alabama, the depth only continues. Because now we get into the true freshmen. And we start with Daniel Hill. Daniel Hill really opened a lot of eyes during his recruiting process, but especially during the All-American game. Because I think there was a notion before that game that, hey, this guy is a short yardage situation back, a bruiser, someone that you're going to feature in the red zone, which we're going to unpack that here in a bit. But I think that was what people thought would encapsulate his ability. After the All-American game, after spring, I think people are really starting to realize, no, this is a bigger running back, someone who has bruising ability and certainly can be an asset in the red zone, but he is a really talented and versatile running back that brings a lot of balance to the table, and that's something you have to love. Now, part of the reason why I said we'll unpack the red zone situation here in a bit is as follows. To quote Nick Saban, create value for yourself. This is the same argument I use for Caleb Odom, and I think it certainly applies for Daniel Hill. When Alabama gets down into the red zone, luckily they have a roster full of talented pieces, but they have true mismatches. On the outside, you have Caleb Odom, and you can't teach 6'5" and the ability to get a high ball the way that he can. Nor can you teach Daniel Hill's bruising, rushing ability, being 6'1", 231 pounds per RollTide.com. The reason why I think that's important is because if you're able to create value for yourself in those situations, you're creating value for yourself all across the board. And as a true freshman, if you are able to create said value, it's going to be tough to take you off the field, meaning your usage will increase not only in the red zone, but all over the football field, because you're going to earn the trust of the coaching staff. That's what really excites me, is you have guys that are straight up mismatches in rooms that are already really talented. Daniel Hill in the running back room and Caleb Odom out with the wide receivers. That should excite everybody, especially because they are just true freshmen. And when you look at Daniel Hill, he showed some exciting things in A-Day and certainly in that All-American game where once again he proved, I'm not just a short yardage bruising back. I can be a running back that you use your whole offensive scheme with, and we can still be hyper successful, and that should excite Alabama fans everywhere. And finally, we arrive at Kevin Riley, someone who may not be on campus yet, but someone who, ladies and gentlemen, do not forget just how gifted he is. This is a guy that, once again, has a supreme amount of balance to his game, and I'm very excited for him to get into a college strength and conditioning room and learn, not only from Gillespie, but learn from all the guys ahead of him, because I talk about this all the time. When you get to college, your tutors are more likely to be peers than they are to be professors, because it's easier to digest that information coming from peers, and that same argument certainly applies on the football field. It's why Alabama is currently after depth pieces that have experience in the secondary. Because yes, there's plenty of talent in the secondary, but no, there's not a lot of experience and you want more numbers at that position group. Well, luckily for Alabama, your running back room is full. You don't need any more numbers there. But you also have guys that have been in the program, that have seen some things, though albeit It's not like Alabama returns a running back that was the key guy last year. They just return guys that have been in this system, they have been in college, and they have been with Coach Robert Gillespie for some time. But I still think that can benefit a Kevin Riley because he can come during fall camp and start getting acclimated, not only to college life, but leaning on the guys around him to get acclimated not only to the scheme, but what it takes to be successful. And luckily, he certainly has the ability to be successful at the college level, and I can't wait to see what he brings to the table. Listen, Alabama's rushing attack, in my opinion, is one of the most loaded rooms in all of college football. And when you start going through the names, it gets to be a lot, and it should excite Alabama fans everywhere, because Alabama is not only going to feature a really tough rushing attack to stop in 2024, when you look at the youth in the room, it's going to continue into 2025 and beyond, especially with a Daniel Hill, especially with a Kevin Riley, and especially with the way they're currently recruiting that room. This is an area I know Alabama fans are really excited to see, and I can't wait to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See you.